It's crazy how fast the gun world changes. Some brands that used to be legends are now barely keeping their heads above water thanks to lawsuits, bankruptcies, and nonstop ATF pressure. What's up? This is Luke from Line 45. Today, we're talking about 6 gun brands that are barely hanging on. These are companies that were once household names but are now one bad quarter away from disappearing for good. Before we dive in, do me a solid. Smash that subscribe, tap the bell, hit all the dang buttons down there. You don't gotta, but it keeps this train rolling and lets me crank out more of this wild gun talk for y'all. Alright, enough of that, let's get back to it. Polymer 8.0. I got into Polymer 8.0 early and watched it change the game. Their 80% Glock-style frames let people legally finish a pistol at home without an FFL or background check, and that DIY angle made them huge in the last decade. They sold jigs, frames, and accessories through big retailers and online shops, and built a real cult following. Everything shifted when federal and state enforcement and rulemaking turned a spotlight on ghost guns. The ATF executed enforcement actions against Polymer 8.0 and similar firms after 2020, and in 2022, the agency moved to treat unfinished frames as firearms for regulatory purposes, which collapsed the legal foundation those kits relied on. Lawsuits from states including California and the District of Columbia piled up, retailers pulled product lines, and legal bills ballooned. Polymer 8.0 tried to adapt by offering serialized firearms and changing product lines, but sales vanished and distribution channels dried up. By mid-2024, the company effectively stopped operations, and its website and storefronts went dark. I still remember seeing kit listings get snapped up like collector items. Polymer 8.0 did not fail because of quality issues. It got squeezed by policy shifts, enforcement, and litigation, and that combo suffocated one of the most influential DIY gun brands in recent memory. If you own Polymer 8.0 parts, I'd stash them because warranty support and supply are gone, and prices are climbing on kits. If you are into building, respect the new regs and check local law before you start an unfinished frame project. Windham Weaponry. I still remember when Windham Weaponry popped up back in 2011. It was founded by Richard Dyke, the same guy who built Bushmaster into a powerhouse before selling it to Cerberus. After Freedom Group ran Bushmaster into the ground, Dyke brought back the old crew and started Windham in Maine. For a while, they were killing it. Every rifle they shipped felt like the same high-quality Bushmaster rifles we grew up with. Their AR-15 seconds were reliable, American-made, and had a loyal fan base that actually cared about craftsmanship. But once the AR market got flooded with cheap imports and budget rifles from Palmetto State Armory and Ruger, Windham started slipping. Their rifles were good, but the price tag scared off a lot of buyers. When the post-COVID gun boom cooled down and demand tanked, the company couldn't keep up. By 2023, they were struggling hard. Local reports out of Maine said they defaulted on loans and shut the plant down, laying off over 70 employees. The same year, Gordon Brothers, a liquidation firm, auctioned off their entire operation. It hurts to see because Windham wasn't a scam company. They just got crushed by market saturation and inflation. AR sales are brutal right now, unless you're selling at the low end or producing military contracts. Windham Weaponry didn't have either. I still own one of their rifles, and it shoots smoothly, but it's basically a relic now. That brand stood for small-town pride and quality, and it's sad to say it's gone for good. Remington Firearms. Remington used to be the name everyone respected. When I was growing up, owning a Remington 700 or 870 meant you were serious about hunting or shooting. But man, watching that company fall apart over the last decade has been brutal. They filed for bankruptcy twice, first in 2018 and again in 2020. The old Remington Outdoor Company got torn apart, and different buyers grabbed what was left. Vista Outdoor picked up the ammo side, and a new group called Roundhill bought the firearms division and renamed it Remarms. It sounded like a comeback story at first, but it hasn't gone that way. Remarms reopened the old Ilion, New York factory, which had been cranking out guns since the 1800s. But by late 2023, they announced plans to shut that plant down completely by March 2024. The official reason was that the facility was outdated and expensive to maintain, but everyone knew it was deeper than that. New York's strict gun laws and weak demand for traditional hunting rifles and shotguns made it almost impossible for them to stay profitable. Remington's been fighting an uphill battle with lawsuits and bad press since the Sandy Hook settlement, which cost them $73 million. The damage to their reputation never went away. Now the brand is split between different owners, and the firearm side feels hollow. I still run my 870, and it's a beast, but that old Remington spirit is gone. What's left of the name barely resembles the company that built America's classic shotguns. Watchtower Firearms. When I first heard about Watchtower Firearms, I thought they were going to shake things up. They came out of Texas with big talk about building high-end AR platforms and custom 1911 style pistols for the modern shooter. Their stuff looked slick, and they pushed a strong veteran-owned identity that got people's attention. But once the hype died down, the financial reality hit them like a freight train. By mid-2025, Watchtower filed for bankruptcy protection after piling up debts and falling short on sales. Court filings showed they owed suppliers and investors hundreds of thousands, and their inventory was barely moving. The problem wasn't just money. They were trying to play in a premium market already ruled by brands like Daniel Defense, Wilson Combat, and Staccato. To break in, you've got to deliver something truly special, and Watchtower never quite hit that mark. The guns were fine, but at those price points, shooters expect flawless performance and proven reliability. When reviews started showing inconsistent QC issues and long lead times, word spread fast. In the gun world, reputation is everything, and once it slips, you're done. I think their biggest mistake was trying to scale too quickly without locking down the basics. Building a brand on flash instead of staying power doesn't work for long. Now their website's quiet, social media's gone dark, and the name's fading fast. It's a shame because they had talent and vision, but ambition alone doesn't pay bills in this business. Jimenez Arms. I remember seeing Jimenez pistols in pawn shops and gun shows everywhere back in the day. They were cheap, small, and simple, which made them popular with folks who just needed a gun that worked on a tight budget. The problem was that Jimenez Arms came out of that whole Ring of Fire group in Southern California, the same circle of budget gun makers like Brink and Jennings. Those companies got hammered in the 90 seconds for quality issues and lawsuits over unsafe designs. Jimenez tried to shake that image when they moved to Nevada and started producing the JA9 and other budget handguns, but history caught up with them. In 2020, the company filed for bankruptcy after the Kansas City lawsuit accused them of supplying guns that ended up in illegal trafficking rings. The ATF came knocking, and it got ugly. Reports showed they were selling to shady dealers who were moving firearms into restricted areas. They rebranded as JA Industries LLC, but it was basically the same setup with a new name. Production trickled on for a bit, but most distributors stopped carrying their stuff, and reviews were brutal. People complained about jams, broken parts, and a lack of warranty support. Nowadays, Jimenez is more of a punchline than a brand. You can still find some of their guns floating around gun shows for under $200, but nobody really trusts them. For a company that once filled a niche for affordable handguns, it's wild how fast they fell off. The lawsuits and ATF heat burned their reputation beyond repair. Cobra Enterprises of Utah. Cobra was one of those brands you couldn't miss if you ever flipped through gun magazines in the early 2000s. They built those tiny pocket pistols and derringers that looked straight out of a Western movie but cost less than a night out. For a lot of folks, it was their first gun because it was cheap and easy to find. But the truth is, Cobra came from the same Ring of Fire lineage as Jimenez, Brink, and Davis Industries, and that meant the same problems followed them. The designs were old, the materials weren't top tier, and the safety record wasn't exactly spotless. By 2020, Cobra Enterprises got hit with a flood of product liability suits and ran out of cash to fight them. The company officially shut its doors that year, citing financial strain. They tried to come back briefly as Behrman Industries, still making those classic derringers, but the market had moved on. When you can buy a reliable Ruger LCP or Taurus G3C for just a bit more money, nobody's risking it on a pistol with a sketchy rep. Even collectors only grab Cobras now for nostalgia, not to carry or shoot. I had a buddy who owned one of their 380s, and we spent more time clearing jams than actually shooting. It was frustrating but kind of funny looking back. Cobra's story isn't about greed or scandal like some others here. It's about being stuck in the past. They never evolved, and the modern market left them in the dust.